and Highways meeting today, the 18th of August. I've just got some introductory notes I have to run through, so bear with us. Thank you. Thank you to all members of the public, councillors and officers who are joining us for today's meeting. Please be aware the council is live streaming this meeting direct to our YouTube channel. I would just like to highlight some key points of the meeting format. Councillors looking to speak will be invited to do so by the chair and will need to come up to the nearest microphone at the front to speak unless you have a microphone on your table. For councillors that have table microphones, the sound technician will be unmuting your microphones when you are invited to speak. If councillors have any concerns about hearing or seeing others in the meeting, please let the chair and the council officer know straight away. If anyone using hearing aids, please make sure to connect to the hearing loop for the best audio quality. If anyone is joining the meeting via Zoom, there will be a noticeable time delay, so we must be mindful of this when interacting with them and allow them time to hear what is being said and respond. Is there anybody on Zoom tonight? Thank you. I must also run through a few key health and safety points for those physically in the meeting room. We encourage that face masks are worn at all times except when you are speaking at the microphone or have a medical exemption. The fire exits are via the main entrance that you entered and the venue through or the disabled access entry point. The assembly point is out on West Down Road to the east of the building, and if you are able to, up towards the unmade section of Wilmington Road. In the venue, please limit your touching of shared surfaces as best possible, although I can confirm that tables, chairs and other such surfaces and facilities have been cleaned ahead of the meeting. Please remain seated unless you are invited up to speak or need to take a comfort break. The toilet facilities are by the main entrance doors. When moving around the room, please be mindful of keeping a comfortable distance from others. I would ask that participants looking to leave the meeting wait until the end of an agenda item to limit distractions from other participants. Voting will be done by a show of hands. Please be sure to make sure your hand is clearly lifted and keep it up until the chair has called the vote. If the meeting goes into confidential session, a short 2-minute break will be held to allow members of the public to leave and stop the live stream feed. If members of the public present in person or via Zoom, members of the public are invited to participate in one of 3 ways: remotely via Zoom, physically in the meeting, or by submitting a written statement to be read out. For those looking to speak specifically about the planning application on the agenda, you will be invited to speak immediately before the committee considers that application. For those looking to speak on non-planning application business, you will be invited to speak during the public participation agenda item. Those members of the public looking to participate via Zoom will be invited to do so first at the relevant point of the agenda. Zoom users are reminded to keep yourself muted until you're invited to speak. The technical host will prompt when it is your turn to speak via the chat function, so please keep an eye on your Zoom chat function. Members of the public physically in the meeting room will be invited to speak next. Please raise your hand to show you wish to speak, and the chair will invite you to come to the microphone in order. Finally, a council officer will read aloud any written statements that have been submitted. Public participation is limited to a maximum of 4 minutes per person and must be relating to an item of business on the agenda. You do not need to state your name when you start speaking. If you do not wish to, but we ask that you clearly state which agenda item you are speaking about. To all present, please remember to show respect to others in the meeting and avoid interrupting where possible to enable others to follow the meeting. If any councillor feels concerned about any aspect of the meeting or discussion, please clearly state point of order. The chair will then gesture for you to elaborate. If anyone present is felt to be behaving unacceptably, they can be ejected from the meeting by resolution. Thank you for listening. On behalf of the council, I'd like to thank everyone for attending this council meeting. So we proceed to agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
There are no apologies and there's a full complement of 9 members.
Thank you. Item 2, disclosure of interest. To deal with any disclosure by members of the disclosable pecuniary interests and interests other than pecuniary interests as defined under the Seaford Town Council Code of Conduct and Localism Act 2011 in relation to matters on the agenda. Councillor Edson.
Thank you, Chair. I am a neighbour of one of the applicants in Rookery Way and I declare an interest. I'm known to them. I won't be taking any part in that. Cheers.
Thank you. Councillor, can you come up to the microphone, please? Sorry.
Thanks, Chair. It's the Sailing Club. Application for the Air Board, Councillor Nicola Papara. I have an interest because I know her.
Thank you. Anybody else? Item 3 of the agenda, public participation. To deal with any questions or brief representations from members of the public in accordance with relevant legislation and the Seaforth Town Council policy. In accordance with Town Council policy, members of the public wishing to speak on individual planning applications may do so immediately before each planning application. So any members of the public like to speak now on non-planning application matters? No. So we move on to agenda item 4, planning applications. LW/21/0278 3 Homefield Road. Lower ground floor and first floor extension and demolition of existing garage and boundary wall and construction of new garage and boundary wall. Any members of the public like to comment on this application? Yes, would you like to come up to the microphone, please?
Good evening, I'm Emma and I'm one of the immediate neighbours affected by this planning application LW210278. First, I'd like to thank the planning officer for the town. I think you are probably spending your 8 hours a week on this application alone and you deserve our sincere thanks. And councillors, as volunteers, this is now the 3rd time that you've had to look at this application. Thank you. This evening, I'm asking that you once again refuse to support this application. These final amendments have not addressed all the issues that I, others and yourselves objected to last time. I feel we are being drip-fed changes, which is a confusing and protracted way to go about things. The changes have not addressed the main problems or met all the key policies. This plan still includes a large and domineering 2-storey extension, the size of which has barely changed since you first saw it in June. Easmore House will dwarf our home, which is a house of some character and adds interest and character to the street, as Easmore House does. I welcome the fact that in terms of design, the 2 turrets have been dropped from the scheme, and this has meant that all the upper floor side windows facing us at number 5 have also gone, which is good. I do, however, remain concerned about privacy, as there's still no screening or trees marked up on the plans to prevent overlooking from the raised roof terrace where it extends out at the back. But it's the huge mass, bulk and location of this 2-storey side extension which is still the main problem. First, there is a vast mega basement to be dug in the gap between Easmore House and our home. It will measure something like 5.5 metres by 29 metres. I can't be sure of the size exactly, as after 3 attempts, the plans still don't give us all the measurements of the actual size of this extension. But it's still clear it will probably be the largest residential basement ever constructed in Seaford. It will have to be dug and then underpinned at a significant angle involving excavations which go much closer to our boundary than the plans themselves indicate. I'm concerned about the safety aspects and risk of subsidence to our land, particularly given the complex local geology, which has not been accurately recorded in this application. Above this basement would sit the main extension, which is formed of 2 very large 2-storey hipped wings coming out towards us, with a raised ground floor extension sitting in between those structures. It will look a very awkward up, down, up design from the side compared with the clean lines currently, and the view from the road will certainly be very jarring. Our home is a smaller property and a less deep house than Easmore, about half as deep in fact, and so this particular extension design next to us would feel very enclosing. These wings would project directly over us, over our drive at the front and over our patio and garden at the back. This double whammy effect is then magnified by the height differences and also sloping ground at the back, which I know some of you have seen. So any 2-storey extension here will always feel like 3 stories. These impacts cannot be understood from the road for those that haven't seen it. This is not an ordinary side extension, one that sensitively tucks into a neighbour's building line or respects adjacent properties. For us at number 5, it will be unacceptably overbearing, it will adversely affect our amenities and how we enjoy our home, and it will also harm its character. I've set out all my issues and policy concerns in my final, what I hope will be my final letter to you. Thank you again.
Thank you. Yes, sir, would you like to come up to the microphone, please?
Yes, good evening. My name's Charles Pearsall-Horner, and I own the Star House at 1 Homefield Road, next door to Easmore House. I've lived there for more than 50 years. First, I would like to say that I support everything that has been so far regarding the extensively large and domineering nature of the extension and where it will be placed. The Star House is a listed building, 1723, and is an important local landmark. It is within the East Blatchton Conservation Area. As you know, apart from building a large extension, the application the applicant wants to demolish the existing garage, build a large new double garage at the front boundary to the road, in the corner next to the Star House. I note that none of my concerns that I've put in writing about this have been addressed in this final amendments, which is why I'm here this evening to repeat some of them. The applicant is embarking on an audacious infringement of his building line with these plans. He seems under the impression that he can adopt the building lines of the Star House, which in fact was built 2 centuries before Homefield Road existed. The applicant's building line is 18 feet away from the front boundary, and I feel he should set the garage back to that. The applicant has been given 3 opportunities now to address this matter. He has failed to provide any valid reason why Lewes District Council should accept a breach. If approved, it would open the floodgates for others to extend their garages to the road. There are big differences in the ground levels between the Star House and Eastmoor House, which means the height and size of the garage, even though it appears reasonable on paper, would in reality be gigantic against the Star House. It would be an eyesore from every viewpoint along Homefield Road. From Blesham Hill Junction will dominate the Star House. The plan clearly contravenes policy DM29 of the Lewis Local Plan, Part 2, which governs garages, because it does not respect the neighbourhood setting. I'm very concerned about the Asian Flint Wall, which forms a boundary between my property and Eastmoor House. This is the original field wall and also part of the conservation area boundary wall. It is over 100 foot long and must be preserved. The wall is fragile and will collapse if any building work takes place near it. It will also be impossible to erect scaffolding or maintain it afterwards the gates or garage has been built so close to it. I also wish to correct a claim which keeps reappearing in these plans, is that the applicant's design for the new front boundary wall will replicate what used to be there. Well, it won't. Some of you, like me, might remember that there was a 4-foot-high, traditional, solid flint wall at the front of Eastmoor House, nothing like the high army barrack-style wall which the applicant wishes to erect. Finally, with the words of my dear friend, Mrs. Jean Mote, who, aged 91, has lived in Blashton Hill, very close to Eastmoor House, for 70 years. She said that in these plans go ahead, Eastmoor House will be turned into some large institution that belongs out in the countryside, not suited to this neighbourhood. We need to protect it from such an over-large and harmful development. I kindly request that you refuse to support this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, would you like to come up to the microphone, please?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Caroline and I live on Homefield Road, and I'm here speaking against the planning application LW 210278. And firstly, I wish to echo all that has been said by the previous two speakers. My decision to move to Seaford, and specifically Homefield Road, over 10 years ago was one of the best decisions of my life. I've always loved the mixture of architectural styles which we have in this part of town. Eastmoor House is a prominent Edwardian house, and it is part of our town's heritage. It makes a positive contribution to the area and the road, as do both its neighbours, the Star House and Pine Grove at number 5. These houses are all very different in style and size, but they sit harmoniously together because of the appropriate and respectful distances between them. Together, they help make this end of Homefield Road, as it joins the East Blatchington Conservation Area, a very attractive area. Eastmoor House is easily the largest house on our road. Its ceiling height per storey, its overall roof line and depth are much greater than any other building in the road. But despite its prominence, as it stands now, it is not oppressive. If these plans go through, it will destroy the appearance of this well-proportioned, elegant house and turn it into an oversized home which imposes itself on its neighbours. From the street view, it will close up much of the gap between it and number 5, so it will look very unbalanced on its own plot. The gap, stated in the plans between the extension and the boundary with number 5, may sound generous on paper, but not in this context. Not with a house of this size and height, and most importantly, depth. I can tell exactly how overbearing and dominant this 2-storey extension will be, particularly over number 5. From the road, Eastmoor House will look ridiculously big. The deep side elevation with its 2 protruding side wings will ruin the clean lines of the house, and its elegance will be lost. This whole unattractive side elevation will be in full view from various positions, such as Homefield Close. These plans might work in a country location, but not in this much more modest residential setting of Blatchington Hill and Homefield Road, with its other immediate neighbours to consider. This is the central problem. There is not a drawing in this application which shows how the extended house and indeed the garage would work next to its neighbours or the street. Finally, I want to say that this application has throughout downplayed or ignored entirely some important heritage aspects, both in dismissing the proximity and relevance of the conservation area itself and in not considering the ancient flint wall. There seems to be no concern that one of the distinctive tall white chimneys will be swallowed up in these plans. It is a significant external architectural feature and one of the pair which has the only ornamentation in the form of a cross on it. These chimneys can be seen from several locations in Seaford. It will be all but lost under one of the extension wings. This demonstrates the complete lack of appreciation of the heritage value of Easmore House, both to the immediate neighbourhood and indeed the whole of Seaford. Easmore House needs to be protected from such an inappropriate and overbearing development, and I respectfully request that you reject this application. Thank you.
Councillor Adeniji.
Thank you, Chair. I am speaking tonight as the County Councillor for Seaford North regarding application LW 210278. I endorse what has been said by these and other residents whom I am here to represent tonight. I urge you to refuse this planning application on the following grounds. The size of the proposed extension is clearly still far too big and overbearing, both on its neighbours and on the landscape. It will certainly dominate the road. The proposed extension will negatively affect the established spacing between properties on Umfield Road. Even with the changes made by the applicant, when you look at everything in its totality, the proposed extension will still dominate existing properties rather than be subservient to it. Such a large and imposing property will have negative effects on the East Blatchington conservation area and on the immediate area, many of which are modest properties. It is therefore not in keeping with the street scene. The proposed extension does not fully respect the heritage of the property by removing its clean, ridged line on the northeast elevation and replacing it with an out-of-character two-winged extension. Also, by hiding one of its landmarks featured chimneys. The proposal for the garage in that location will evidently harm the ancient flint wall, as has been said earlier. Both Star House and Number 5 are properties which will be materially affected by this proposed extension. Star House will have an oversized garage towering over it, and there are still issues of overlooking over Number 5's garden, which have not been resolved by the latest amendments. The overbearing nature of the proposed extension on Number 5's garden will be very great, and I've been to see it myself. I am also concerned about the likely overshadowing the proposed extension will have over Number 5 in particular. This needs to be properly addressed, and I don't think it has been addressed. Even though the proposal for turrets have been removed, the size and style of the proposed extension is still very much out of character with other properties in the area. Policy DM28 of Lewis Local Plan, paragraph 2 states, and I quote, "An extension must respect and respond positively to the scale, height, size, coverage, bulk, mass and character of adjacent properties and the wider street scene. These proposals clearly do not do that. Finally, I am pleased to see that the Design and Conservation Officer recently wrote, and I quote, the considerable size of an extension, both in mass and scale, detracts from the historic context of a residential property within a semi-urbanized setting, instead suggesting a grandeur associated with a rural manor. It is therefore considered that the proposals will have an overbearing impact upon the street scene and thus, in the wider context, the setting of East Blatchington Conservation Area. And these are the words of the Conservation Officer. I acknowledge that there has been some design changes made by the applicants, but these are minor changes in the bigger context. They do not address the concerns raised by residents, nor do they address the concerns raised by yourselves when you met on the 28th of July. I therefore urge you to refuse to support this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak on this application? So I open it to the committee. Councillor.
Well, I read with interest the response that we got that explained the changes and the reasons for requesting us to pass this. The first paragraph says, Homefield Road is a suburban residential area of mixed developments with no architectural rhythm. In actual fact, it's the spacing between the houses that is the architectural rhythm of that road, so this development interrupts that. And I also notice further down, it says, with reference to GB03, a building must be set back 1,000 millimetres from the original building, and they're requesting that we allow it to be set back 500 millimetres because otherwise one of the rooms will be too small or smaller than designed by the applicant. And it's just someone's plans not fitting to the regulations is not a reason to set aside the regulations. So I can't see any value in that, that response either. Thank you.
Councillor Payne.
Again, I agree with everything that's been said. I did go and have another look today, and I agree with the flip wall. There's no way they can take that garage down without putting it at risk. So I think, for all the other reasons that's been stated, I think, we should reject it. And I do agree with Jeff's comment last time. If this wasn't where it is, it wouldn't really be an issue, but it's where it is that is the issue. And that's something we can never get across.
Thank you. Anybody else like Councillor Borman?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. When I started looking at the amended plans, I was relieved to start with. They'd removed the turrets. There's overlooking windows at the side had been removed. They'd set it back, not as much as we'd like, but a little bit. So we're starting to do it. But it is still an overbearing, predominant extension. The scale and height, it's unbalanced on its own plot because it's already set off to the side of its own plot. So to put the extension on the side, it's making the plot unbalanced. So I still think all our, what we've refused it on before still stands. But definitely the garage. They haven't changed the position of the garage. The garage sits on the conservation area, both with its side boundary and front boundary. It's a large garage. It will be overbearing and dominating two-star house next to it. It's not on its building line. If you look at all the other garages down Homefield Road, they're all set back along the sides of the house, not forward of the house. So the garage can destroy the flint wall, and it's not on its building line, and is destroy the conservation area. So that's definitely shouldn't be moved from the position it's already at. So I think we should still be, and I propose we refuse the application on everything that we've said before.
Thank you, Councillor Borman. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Lord? Do you want to speak on this application? No. Anybody else want to speak on this application? No?
Just a few comments on what, I mean, I know obviously the principle of your objection, you've mentioned it. Do you want to refer, do you agree with the objections that based on contravention of the local plan policies? Do you agree that those policies should be referred to in the objections, along with the general view that it's still too large, too out of scale and character, dominant of number 5, the garage threatening the flint wall and the impact on the conservation area. So all those points, and to mention also the contravention with the local plan policies that have been mentioned by the objectors, and I mentioned it by the applicant, DM 28 in particular, and DM 29 relating to garages I think was mentioned as well. Okay, fine. And just the other thing is that personally, and it's been referred to in the debate, I think one of the significant issues or significant comments was from the Design and Conservation Officer, or the Design and Conservation Officer who was consulted by Lewes District Council, because she has obviously she's out of the direct line of objectors and councillors. She takes a more objective view of it, but she has come out, as Councillor Adenici said, strongly against the proposals. And I think in the last response to Lewes District Council, we referred to the fact that the members agreed with her conclusions. Do you want me to put that in the proposal again to sort of make it clear that we'd seen those comments and were supporting them? Because she's in a more objective and neutral position than other people in the debate, if you like. Okay.
You agree with that? Yes. Councillor Lord? Yes. So, yeah. Right. So, can I have a show of hands of objecting to this application?
1, 2, 3, 4.
It's unanimous.
That's unanimous.
Right.
So that objection is carried with those points included.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. And if you want to leave at this point, but you're most welcome to stay, as I've said. Thank you. We move on to planning applications received week commencing Monday the 19th of July. LW/21/04606 Sovereign Close. Erection of a single-storey side extension with internal reconfigurations and associated hard/soft landscaping. Any members of the public like to comment on this application? So open to the committee. Would you like to lead on this one? Councillor Borman?
Yeah, I think it's quite a modest extension, and I'm quite happy to support it.
Thank you. Does that find? Thank you. Councillor Lord. Councillor Honeyman? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. The only comment I would say is on the diagrams as such. They don't put the trees behind them or anything, so there's a lot of fairly substantial amount of trees behind it. But it's just, I know it's just a matter of what I sort of observed. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right, unless there's anybody else, can I have a show of hands of supporting this application, please?
Support.
And those against or abstaining?
That's carried. 8 votes to none, 1 abstention.
Thank you. LW stroke 21 stroke 0378 Maycroft Eastbourne Road. Variation of drawing numbers to condition number 3 relating to approval of LW stroke 15 stroke 0140, revision of drawings as P27401, a site location and proposed block plan layout. I don't think I need to go on any further on that. I think you wanted to go on this.
Yes, this one's been reported because not because it's really that significant. It's just the approval goes back to 2015, so it won't be one that members will be familiar with. We were notified of it. It doesn't. The variations are quite minor, but because members wouldn't be aware of the scheme in the first place because it goes back 6 years, I thought it was worth putting before members. But I don't think there's any significant issues there. It's really more for information than anything else.
Okay. Any members of the public like to comment on this application? Right, open to committee. Councillor Lord. Can you come up to the microphone? Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I was just saying I think we should follow Jeff's lead here and support the application.
Thank you. Does that find a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Tay. Any other comments? So can I have a show of hands for supporting this application?
1, 2, 3, 4. That's carried and supported unanimously.
LW stroke 21 stroke 0450 and 0451 Albion House 2 High Street. Planning and listed building consent for installation of replacement boiler and flue. Any members of the public like to comment on this application? No? Open to the committee. Let's go to Councillor Borman.
Thank you, Chair. I had a look at this, and they're changing the flue from like a square one down towards the bottom with a taller one going up the house, so it does kind of change the look of the building, but I think we can actually support it and I've got no issues with it.
Thank you. Does that find a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Everton. Any other comments? So can I have a show of hands for supporting this application?
1, 2, 3, 4. Unanimously supported. Thank you.
LW stroke 21 stroke 0426 Beachlands Care Home Marine Parade. Members of the public like to comment on this application? Open to the committee. Councillor Borman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't know why they want them illuminated. There's street lights straight in front of the property. There's one at the side of the property as well, so you wouldn't actually be able to miss an unilluminated sign. But it does actually go against SCA 6, which is on the seafront development, which says the development should not detract from the natural, open, uncommercialised environment. And illuminated lights are commercial lights, so actually I object to this application.
Thank you. Councillor Honeyman.
Thank you, Chair. If there's illuminated lights and illuminated lights, of course. If it's neon style, maybe I can agree. But if they are going to be lit up, can we put a condition about time? They have to go off at a certain time, so they'd only be on to early evening, for example. That would be behind the. Otherwise, I would agree with you, Councillor Borman. I wouldn't really accept the situation. Thank you.
Would you like to second Councillor Borman's proposal? Okay, right, thank you. Councillor Mead.
Thank you, Chair. Could we suggest that we're happy with the design if it wasn't illuminated? I mean, you know, the standout 3D effect of the letters and the way they're designed, as long as it wasn't illuminated. Is that fair?
Thank you. Any other comments? Does Councillor Borman's proposal find a seconder? Councillor Everton. I feel this is rather unneighbourly to the block of flats on the east side of Beachlands, because they're the ones who is going to be mostly affected with it, and you know, against them being illuminated. So yes, so I just fully support the. So can I have a show of hands? Councillor? Yeah.
This is objection on the grounds that the illuminated lights would be inappropriate and contrary to SEA 6 of the neighbourhood plan.
Councillor Borman,
Can we say we're happy with 3D? Because I agree with Councillor Mead, we're happy with it being 3D but not illuminated.
Not illuminated, fine.
But then I also agree with Councillor Honeyman that if Lewis actually are likely to accept it, can we have a time when...
Yeah, restriction
on the times that they are illuminated.
Councillor.
So thank you for letting me come back again. So obviously, we know we had quite a lot of interest on the east, on the block of flats to the east of the side. So if I'd be happier with no illumination on the east side, but on the other side, the other two sides, north and west, ish, isn't it? North and west, that'd be more fine. But I still think it should be sort of time limited, whatever happens, really. So thank you, because it is quite dominant. It could stand out significantly along there.
I mean, personally, I feel just on the front, and they're probably over the entrance, the main entrance to the building. I don't see why you need, you know, one on the other side. I think just on the front, and just over the main entrance when you go in the building, which is on the east side, I think.
As you say, I don't think any of us is against the principle of having a sign there. It's how the illumination is causing the issue, isn't it, more than anything? So,
yeah.
So.
Okay. Okay, we're all right now. Yeah. Okay. So can I have a show of hands of objecting to this application?
1, 2, 3, 4. That's unanimously.
Okay. Okay, right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
LW/21/0374, New Haven and Seaford Sailing Club Marine Parade. I think you've got something to say on this one.
There's a problem with this application. It can't really be considered because if you've looked at the information on the website, the plans and supporting documents posted on the website relate to an application to retain the actual building, the shed or whatever you like to call it, whereas the application, as you can see, is for A-frame boards and painted lettering on the side. And there are no reference to A-boards or painting on the side of the building on the website. So one application seems to have got mixed up with another application. I've emailed the case officer about it. She only returned from leave yesterday, and I haven't heard from her. But I did say to her that really in the circumstances, as we haven't got the proper plans, the design of the A-boards or anything like that in front of us, the committee can't really deal with the matter today, and it will have to be deferred in the hope that we get the proper plans put on the website soon, and that members can then have a look at what's proposed. So there's obviously been a bit of a confusion somewhere, but the plans relate to the actual shed, the floor area of the shed, the dimensions of the shed, which are nothing to do with the advert application. So it can only really be deferred.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Payne?
I thought the application was actually to say that they've already taken the A-frame away and they're applying for retrospective approval. So it wouldn't be on the plans because they've already taken them away. What they're saying is, don't make us put it back, is the way I read it. So that's what
Well, I don't know if any other member looked at the plans on the website, what they think, but
that's the point. They wouldn't be on the plans because they're not there anymore. It says retrospective advertisement consent application for removal of A-frame boards and painted lettering on the side and rear cabin walls.
Yeah, removable. I mean, what it means to me is that they've had A-frame boards up there all summer to draw attention to what's on sale at the cabin, and they're asking for retrospective consent to retain those boards. They're removable after each day, but they're still there all day when the cabin is open. And because they've been there for a few months, they want consent to retain them when they need them, either for the rest of this season when they're open and for next season.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, I misread it. It's my fault.
Sorry. That's all right.
Thank you. So if the committee is happy that we defer this to the next meeting. Yeah, thank you, because I think, as it's our seafront, it's important that we see the proper plans. Planning applications received week commencing Monday the 26th of July. LW/21/0439, 36 Belgrave Crescent. External render applied to lower floor and front elevation with grey composite cladding to upper floor. Members of the public like to comment this application? Open to the committee. Who'd like to lead on this one? Councillor Borman.
Thank you, Chair. A lot of people are doing this now with the grey composite at the top and rendering at the bottom, and in some areas it looks quite nice. But if you go down Belgrave Crescent, all the houses are tiled at the top and brick at the bottom. So to do this, to build to the house, and also there's bungalows with small bits of white composite in like a triangle, but to do this to the house is actually going to be out of keeping with the area, and the character and the street scene is just going to totally change. So I don't know what the rest of the committee think.
Okay. Are you making a proposal?
See what the rest of the committee think first.
Okay. Councillor Meek.
Thank you, Chair. I don't personally have a problem with it. I think, characterful. We get different looking properties. I think it increases the character of the area. I don't see that everything has to be the same all the way along a street. But so, with respect, Councillor Gorman, I'm quite happy for it.
Councillor Lord.
What's happened? The battens which hold the towels to the wall have got nail sickness. That means the nails have actually failed. So it's got to come off anyway. And to put the towels back on costs an absolute fortune. So you put a composite board on, got a lifespan of about 50 odd years. I won't be in 50 years' time, believe it or not. So it's just a gradual process. When these houses were built, composite grey boards were invented. Like plastic window frames weren't invented, but we've actually just moved along. And it's a quick, simpler and easier way of cladding your property. So I actually support the application. Even though I agree with Councillor Bowman, it's completely out of character what we've got, but it's just what's going to happen in the next 10 years. So.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Meek?
Thank you, Chair. If the applicant wants to come to my house, I've got about 800 tiles in my front garden. They have them at a very good price.
Right, so can I have a proposal if you're mindful of supporting this application? Councillor Everton, does that find a seconder? Councillor Meek. And can I have a show of hands for supporting this application?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in support.
Those against? Those abstaining?
That's supported.
That's that one in. Supported. LW/21/0577, 15 Kimberley Road. Single storey rear extension, associated decking and steps. Members of the public like to comment on this application? Open to the committee. Do you want to come up to the microphone? Councillor Borman.
Yeah, it's a single storey rear extension and it's quite modest for the road that it's in, so fully support it.
Thank you. Councillor Lord. Thank you. And anybody else like to comment on this application? So open to the committee. Oh, sorry. Can I have a show of hands for supporting this application?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Councillor Everton, 9. That's unanimously supported.
LW/21/0576, 14 Firle Grange, 2-storey side extension. Any members of the public like to comment? Open to the committee. Councillor Meek.
Thank you, Chair. It is a pretty big extension, but I think the area can take it, and I think in that locality they're big houses anyway, so I would support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Meek. Does that find a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Argent. Any other comment? And can I have a show of hands for supporting this application?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's carried, supported unanimously.
LW/21/0615, 23 Fairways Road, erection of garage and 2-storey side extension annex. Any members of the public like to comment on this application? Would you like to come up to the microphone, please?
Thank you. My name is Amanda Riley, and I'm the immediate next door neighbour to 23 Fairways Road. I'm sorry, I haven't prepared a long statement, but I just wanted to ask you to refuse this application and say that there are at least 5 other neighbours who oppose it. It's a very large 2-storey extension. When they last made an application, it was refused, mainly on the grounds of being out of character for the area. And it doesn't seem to me that the plan has changed very much from the time when it was refused. I feel it's overbearing, overshadowing is a really big problem for me in particular, as I'm the immediate neighbour. It's out of character and it would lead to a loss of much needed space and light between number 23 and number 21. I generally feel it's too big and it's too close to the boundaries on both sides. If I could just make another point, I also wondered if it adheres to the Seaford neighbourhood plan, which I think, if I understand it, stipulates that the windows should match on the main building and on the extension. I don't believe it does. And I think also the extension is supposed to be set 1 metre back, and again, I don't believe it is. And I don't know how important this is, but it's being presented this time as a granny annex. And I have written to the councillors about this. I don't believe it's an annex, and it also isn't for a granny who's moving there and needing accommodation. The situation is actually very different. The lady who would be living there actually owns the 4-bedroom house. So I do feel it's a slightly emotive label being put on for the second attempt to get it through. I'm sorry, I haven't got any more details. I've forgotten my glasses. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, can I make a few comments on this? Because this is a slightly... There are issues here which need to be explained before you debate it because of the recent history. The neighbours obviously mentioned the main issues, but there was an application that we objected to last year, a similar application on the same property, which was refused by Lewes District Council and went to appeal. Well, the main gist of that application was that this extension, which is very similar to what's proposed now, was intended as a separate dwelling for other members of the extended family of the owners, and it was given a garden and a curtilage, and the refusal was really based on the fact that it would be completely out of scale and character to carve a dwelling out of the curtilage of this house and make it a pair of semi-detached dwellings, because it was completely out of scale and character with the size of the plots of the road and the character of the houses, and so it was turned down quite emphatically. I think the applicants seem to be relying on the fact that they've altered the plans to that they've withdrawn any idea of having a separate curtilage and a separate dwelling, but it's still a large extension intended for members of the extended family, if you like. So that the principle's still there. It's been passed off as a granny annex, and it is wrong, really. It's close to being a granny annex in that it's a additional accommodation for members of the family, but it's not intended to be. It's not within the granny annex policy, because the granny annex would be usually single-storey, small, self-contained unit to allow an elderly member of the family, say, to have some independent living, but to also have the benefit of the care and supervision and proximity to other members of the family. There are plenty of granny annexes around, and I'm sure you know how they work. This is sort of been passed off as being within the granny annex policy, but it isn't really like that. But I think the important point is, as the resident and the neighbour has said, it's still a large extension. And although the main objection to the last proposal was that it was a separate dwelling, and this isn't going to be a separate dwelling, it still can be seen as being out of character in the same way as 3 Homefield Road, out of scale and character with the other properties in the road. It's a prominent corner plot. It is not set back, as the resident has said, as the neighbour has said. It's not set back a metre. It's set back half a metre. It's been tweaked a bit by the new by the applicant and their new agent. It's been reduced slightly, but there's still an extension at the back, which isn't mentioned, a dining room extension to replace conservatory. The garage has been moved to the other side of the house from the neighbour at number 21, and it will be a prominent feature right on the corner, where there will be an access, a highway access, very close to the junction with Linfield Avenue or Road, Linfield Avenue, I think. Anyway, so it still retains a lot of the issues which led to the dismissal of the appeal, even though the idea of having a semi-detached house latched onto this main house for members of the family has been dropped. Also, if Lewes were to approve this, Well, if you were to object, obviously I don't know what members will think of it, but if there is to be an objection, or even if the application is supported, I think it's also important to ask or request Lewes District Council in this case to impose a condition on, if they were minded to grant consent, impose a condition restricting the use of this extension as a separate dwelling, because it could easily be turned. It's got sufficient accommodation within it and sufficient size to be turned into a separate dwelling. Okay.
Thank you. Right, open to the committee. Who would like to lead on this application? Councillor Payne.
Everything I was going to say, Jeff has said. I've been to the site again. I totally agree with it. It's out of character, and where the garage would be right on that junction. I actually parked near the junction today, and if you're coming out of it, you wouldn't be able to see people coming around the corner. So, both on the size and location of the garage, I would object to it.
Thank you. Councillor Argent. Thank you. Do you want to make any comments? Okay. Any other? Councillor Borman.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the garage on the right-hand side coming right out onto the junction, I've got huge concerns for road safety there. But also, yes, it might be classed as a granny annex, but when you look at our neighbourhood plan, it's still a two-storey side extension. So the building, or the extension, is more than 50% of the main building, which goes against our neighbourhood plan. The ridge height is only 0.5 metre, but actually should be 1 metre, and it should be set back 1 metre from the front of the house, and it's minimal. I'd say that it might be 0.2, 0.3 is minimal, so there are further objections to the extension.
If there's an objection, I'll make sure it says the relevant policies are included, because there are relevant policies, as Councillor Borman said.
Any other comments? So we've got a proposal that we object to this. Do you want to come back? Oh. To object to this application. Do you want to run through the...
Well, yes, I mean, it's overbearing, it's out of scale and character of the street scene, overbearing in relation to number 21, that moving the garage to the junction will cause highway safety problems, and the amendments that have been made are minimal, and that there is a contravention of various design guidelines and policies of the Seaford neighbourhood plan relating to two-storey side extensions.
Yeah. And if the LDC are mindful...
Yeah, but if they're mindful to grant permission, because of its size and because of the nature of the extension, there should be a restriction that it shouldn't be used as a single dwelling.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Meek.
Chair, I don't know if I've got a different map from everybody else, but to me the garage doesn't look like it's encroaching onto the view or anything. I mean, it's to me. Have you got this? Looks like the garage to me is miles from the road.
It's got to come out near the junction, isn't it? I mean, it's quite close.
Yeah. So where the drive would be.
Yes,
yeah. Not where the garage is.
Yes, it's more where the drive would be.
Okay.
I think by taking the built form of the house closer to the junction, it doesn't do any favours to the street scene, as before you had just the garage and the house, and then quite a wide space before Linfield Avenue, the return frontage. Now you've got building closer to that return frontage, but I think the main issue with the garage is not that, it's the fact that it's going to come out quite close to the junction. That's what I understood anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's I think the bulk of the extension is just going to unbalance the street scene, because you have got that nice gap between each houses, and the same with the bungalows on the opposite side. It just spoil the character of the area.
I would just say that the number 21 is built right up to the boundary wall. And there is a gap from number 23. I'm playing devil's advocate here, but it is a big plot with a lot of space, and in the normal course of events we'd say it could probably take it. But I do accept everything that's been said, and I'm particularly glad that Jeff raised the point of, in future years, it could easily be divided up and made into two separate properties, and I think that's a huge issue, and I'd absolutely support Councillor Borman's comments about, you know, the ridge heights and the not being a metre back. So I would object to the application, but I'm just raising those issues just to clarify that, you know, it is a big plot.
Yeah, I understand. Right, so can I have a show of hands of objecting to this application?
1, 2, 3. That's unanimous objection based on the grounds that we've been through.
Thank you. Right, LW/21/0413, Seaford Railway Station, station approach, removal of 2 parking spaces in the car park and installation of a cycle shelter with 2-tier cycle rack. Thank you. Councillor Hanneman.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if it mentions what's going to happen to the existing cycle shelter inside on the platform, or this is in addition. But you could argue, as it's such a small car park anyway for a station, that the loss of 2 spaces might be the wrong way forward. I'm not sure if there's space on the actual platform itself to actually do something similar. And there's something in addition. I'm not sure if there's means to maybe, if you're looking at the future unless they're looking at the future to exit the station from the other way, you know, to going into the town the other way in the future, and they're trying to future-proof that. I'm not sure what the rationale is based on, unless I've missed something.
Well, I looked at it this evening. You're talking about restriction of space.
Well, no, I'm talking on the platform now. You know, you may walk into the town the other way, you know, for Dane Road, where the surgery is now. You know, the path, making a new exit at some stage. If it's maybe in preparation for something like that.
Well,
if they want to take the existing cycle shelters away. And then build the ones on the car park. I don't know. You see what I mean? I don't know if they're intending to have both cycle racks there.
No.
Long term.
I think we've just got to look what's before us. You
can't think of
not
the...
assume. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. But obviously, there is, as it's a small car park, you would be leading two spaces, and you could argue they've already got another rack there anyway.
It's where there's a skip in the corner at the moment. Yeah. It is sort of wasted space, and it's going to be there, isn't it?
I think you've got the disabled parking space, and then I think there's a gate, and then there's 2 parking spaces, and it's those 2 parking spaces.
So if it's not really taking up space, then I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right, Councillor Lord.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. We're always going on about car parking provisions for houses. So when we have a house built, it has to have a car parking provision or 2 car parking provisions for every planning application that comes into it. So what we're saying now, we're saying we're in 2 car parking spaces off the car park, and those will have to be parked on the road. They have to be parked somewhere. And yet, we've got the longest platform in Sussex on the actual platform itself. Why can't the park the bike things, I don't know, cycle things, I don't know, why can't they be put onto the platform? A little bit, there's a shelter there. Why can't we put next to the shelter on the platform? And then we can retain 2 valuable car parking spaces in the centre of Seaford. It's as simple as that, just put them on the platform. Because everybody gets a bike, everybody pushes it through the ticket hole and put it onto the platform, and we still retain 2 parking spaces. It may well be in the future we need to get an additional disabled space. Well, we've lost 2 spaces. So I think it's not being properly thought through. And I would prefer it if we do have the cycle racks, they're on the platform, but we still retain our 2 car parking spaces on the car park. So I actually object to this, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lord. Anybody else like to speak on this application? Councillor Mead.
As the chair of the Climate Change Working Party, I obviously support putting as many cycle racks around as we possibly can. But I do take Councillor Lord's point. However, there may be reasons why they don't want to cite it on the platform, but I don't want an objection on this score to lose the opportunity to put cycle racks in. So I would support it if it means we don't lose the cycle racks, but I would only support it if object to it if I knew the cycle racks would be going somewhere else. I think what was also being referred to by Councillor Honeyman was
can you
that.
Talk through me, please?
Sorry, Chair, but I was going to say what was being referred to by Councillor Honeyman was the fact that I think there has been a suggestion that there might be a pedestrian access route round the head of the line to get down into Richmond Road, and therefore people could access from the station straight onto the Salts and down to the seafront. I think that's what you were referring to. But anyway, that's my position. I wouldn't want to lose the potential for cycle racks by objecting to it. I would only, only if they could be sited somewhere else, and I'm very happy for it to be on the platform. But I don't know if we can incorporate that into something, Jeff, that we can kind of feed back. That's how I would support an objection only if it was going to be cited somewhere else.
I think what the Chair has already said is the right way forward. Deal with what's in front of you, and if you think that we need cycle racks at the station, then support it. But you can't really, otherwise, you can't make any assumptions that if there's not a cycle rack here, it has to go somewhere else. You just got to deal with what's in front of you. If you think it's okay to have cycle racks in these 2 spaces, you support it. If you don't like the loss of 2 spaces, you object to it. But don't try and sort of rewrite the plans, because you just don't know what they have in mind. It's up to them what they propose. You deal with what's in front of you, and the issues are either cycle racks or parking spaces.
So if you're mindful that you don't like to lose 2 car parking spaces, reject it. And then, if Lewis comes up the same, then they'll have to have a rethink where to put the cycle rack. Councillor Evden.
Yeah, I'd like to object to this on the grounds that that's a tiny car park, and I don't think we can afford to lose 2 spaces of it. But I'm all for bike racks elsewhere. But on the basis of just, do we want to lose 2 spaces? We don't. It's a very tiny car park.
Thank you.
Is that a seconder to Councillor Lord's proposal?
Yes. Can I have a seconder to Councillor Lord's proposal?
Councillor Evenden might just have seconded that.
Yeah. Are you seconding Councillor Lord? Okay. Right. So, can I have a show of hands of objecting to a cycle rack in the car park?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 in objection.
Those against?
1, 2.
I'm just going to abstain. I'm going to sit on the fence. Right, thank you. So it's objection. LW/20/0848, 13 St Peter's Road, revised scheme, demolition of existing residential care home and erection of 3 by 3 bedroom bungalows. Open to committee because we've got no public left. Councillor Borman.
Thank you, Chair. Well, isn't it nice when a developer puts a plan forward, has lots of objections from residents, goes back, listens to all those objections and changes it. And have you seen how many letters of support are now for this application? So I fully support the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Meek. Any other comments?
Just a suggestion, it's a bit tight for construction vehicles, and there's been a few objections from residents on the fringes based on the difficulties and the dust and the noise caused by sort of the building. In those circumstances, you might just want to suggest that because of the restrictions of the site, there's a construction management scheme is worked into the conditions if they're minded to grant consent, just to make sure that the construction is properly managed and supervised and conditioned. If that's okay.
You're happy with that? Right, so can I have a show of hands of supporting this application?
I guess supported unanimously with that condition.
Planning applications received week commencing Monday the 2nd of August. LW/21/0331 60 Sutton Avenue, side rear single storey extension with crown/lantern roof. Would you like to lead on this application? Councillor Bourman?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm quite happy to support this application.
Thank you. Any other comments? Can I have a show of hands of supporting this application?
That's supported unanimously.
Thank you. LW/21/0506 14 Manor Road North. Single storey front extension and enlargement of front balcony. Who would like to lead on this one? Councillor Edson.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed that the District Council's planning are not very happy with balconies, and you know, it looks to me as though if we pass this one, it's going to get kicked into touch by LDC.
Front and rear, I think
Yes.
it's rear balconies they've got an allergy to. But front balconies, I think, they're more ornamental, aren't they? Front balconies, not such a privacy issue.
No.
Of overlooking a rear garden. So I think
this one might get through.
I agree. It's something I was going to bring up in the update report.
Oh, right.
The sort of allergy to rear balconies.
Thank you. I think this one's sort of been extended to balance up the frontage. Any other comments, Councillor Bourman?
Yeah, as you just said, they've extended it just to make it more in alignment with the rest of the house, so happy to support.
Thank you. Does that find a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Payne. And can I have a show of hands, please?
That's supported unanimously, thank you.
LW/21/0516 74 Clementine Avenue. Creation of additional storey above detached garage through increasing eaves height. I'd like to lead on this one. Councillor Meek.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't see any reason to object to this if the neighbour is happy that it kind of faces next to. I don't think there's an SDNP issue because I think it's down the hill from there, and in any way it's not nearly as high as the houses, so I don't have an objection to it myself.
Thank you. Councillor Bourman.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're going to have a lot more applications come through in the coming months and years with people wanting to put sort of extra height on garages for home offices and things, which I'm quite happy to support. The only thing I don't like about this, why have they got the stairwell on the outside of the property? Why haven't they got it in their own, I know it's still in the garden, but because there are going to be security issues having it on the outside. They say it's because of overlooking, but if they moved it to the front of the garage, could have the door open, they'd be overlooking their own property and not the neighbour's garden because of the angle that the garage is at. So I'd actually object to this application for that reason.
Thank you.
Or you could just query the location of the stairs if you're okay with the principle of the building. I mean, it is quite a pretty building with the hip at the front as it stands, although it's a double garage. It is going to be quite a change, and it's quite close to the road. But and the stairs are quite an odd feature.
Yeah.
An odd feature, but as I say, the building itself, well, it is only a double garage anyway. And it'll have the glass in the front, which will also make it a bit more attractive. But the stairs are an odd feature, so you could just say the building fine, but the stairs an odd feature and a bit out of character. Well, there's two features in front of you. You can always say you like one but not the other.
I mean, personally, I feel agreed with Councillor Borman with the stairs being on the street side. I think that's out of character to the street scene. And personally, I would like the hip end of the roofs to stay, because the garages around that area are quite attractive. They're not just flat roof garages, and it's all part of the estate. So that's my comments on it. So I've got a proposal from Councillor Boardman to object. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Edson. So can I have a show of hands of objecting to this application?
1, 2, 3, 4. 4 objections. 4 votes for objecting.
And those 4?
1. That's so the objection is rejected by 5 votes to 4. So we need a proposer to support it.
Councillor Meek, and seconded by Councillor Payne, and a show of hands of supporting this application.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 in support.
Those against?
1, 2, 3, 4 against. So it's supported by 5 votes to 4.
LW/21/0633, 27 Richington Way, demolition of existing conservatory and erection of a single-storey rear extension. Who'd like to lead on this application? Anybody? Councillor Borman?
I'm quite happy to support this application.
Thank you. Any other comments? And can I have a show of hands of supporting this application?
That's unanimously supported,
thanks. LW/21/0534, 14 South Down Road, replace existing outbuilding with a brick garden room. Would you like to lead on this one? Councillor Meek?
I have to have a lie down after this. I don't see any reason not to support this application. It's a slightly bigger building, but it seems to be completely within keeping, so I would propose that we accept it.
Thank you. Does that find a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Borman. Any other comments? And can I have a show of hands of supporting this application?
That's supported unanimously, thank you.
LW/21/0431, 7 Kingston Close, single-storey rear extension. Who'd like to lead on this one? Councillor Borman?
Yes, a modest extension, so happy to support.
Thank you. Does that find a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Everton. Any other comments? And can I have a show of hands of support?
That's supported unanimously.
Thank you. LW/21/0528, 3 Chinkton Way. Single-storey front porch extension, single-storey rear extension, alterations to roof to facilitate a loft conversion, including front, side and rear dormers.
Yeah, just to say that this is quite a welcome application because it indicates that the owners of 3 Chinkton Way, and one of them is the architect as well for the application, it appears that they won't be appealing against the recent refusal of 2 new detached houses on the site, that they obviously intend to improve the accommodation in the existing dwelling, which the residents and the town council wanted to be retained. So it's obviously you've got to look at the merits of the application before you respond, but it is a welcome sign that they won't be pursuing the demolition of the property and the 2 new houses there.
Okay, who'd like to lead on this one? Councillor Lord. Can you, sorry, it's for the, you know.
Thank you, Chair, members. Yes, I've had quite a lot of dealings with this particular application in its infancy, and when we discussed it at the district, and there's an overshadowing issue to the next door neighbours, and that's what basically got rejected, even though I didn't agree with it, but that's nothing to do with me. I think what's happened is gone back literally, pardon the pun, to the drawing board, and he's decided to actually alter the existing building. I think what he's proposing is in keeping with the building and in the area, and I strongly support this particular application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Don't find a seconder. Councillor Meek.
Thanks, Chair. Just to say, are we happy with the front dormers? We often have a problem with dormers. I don't know if it's out of character with that kind of bungalow, but otherwise I think it's a really good application.
Thank you. Any other comments? No. So can I have a show of hands of support in this application?
That's supported unanimously, thank you.
LW/21/0536, 10 Monarch Gardens, single-storey side extension and erection of a rear conservatory. Who would like to lead on this application? Councillor Meek.
Chair, I don't know if anyone else found the plans confusing. I couldn't understand them at all. I couldn't see where the extension was. It didn't seem to be very representative. So I'm not going to vote on this because I couldn't understand it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Borman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. They weren't the easiest to read and understand, but I think that it's a modest extension at the side and the rear, and I'm happy to support it.
Thank you. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Lord. Any other comments? So can I have a show of hands of support in this application? Thank you.
That's eight votes in favour of supporting, so it's supported with one abstention.
And you're abstaining. Where are we? Planning applications received week commencing the 9th of August. LW/21/0535, 4 Rookery Way, Bishopstone. Alterations to roof to facilitate loft conversion with rear dormer, single-storey rear extension and raised rear platform. Who'd like to lead on this one? Councillor Borman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, Rookery Way is on slightly higher than the road below, so having a rear dormer is not going to be overlooking to neighbours or anything, and it'll give them lovely views, so I'm fully happy to support this.
Thank you. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Honeyman. Any other comments? So Can I have a show of hands of support in this application?
Supported unanimously, thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Edson's not voting on that one.
Oh, of course.
No, because... Right, we move on to agenda item 5, road closure application for the French Street Market on pages 9 and 10.
It's a routine application that comes up this time of the year, every year, except probably for last year. But there is a debate on street markets generally, or an item on street markets at on the full council agenda for next week, when members will have an opportunity not only to debate proposal for a new street market, but also the existing street markets that have taken place, the Italian and French street markets. But this particular item is simply to consider the highways implications, whether the closure of these roads will cause any particular problems for the duration of the setting up of the market and the holding of the market. So, as I say, this is just the highways side of it. The main issue, the principle of markets in the town and where they should take place, if they should take place, that's to be debated under an item at next Wednesday's full council meeting.
Right, Councillor Borman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I do think, obviously, from the full council report, though, the feedback of the French and Italian market is something that we should really think about. Is there any way that we can defer this, or whether we can...
I think it's too, to be reasonable, it's too late in the day to interfere with the arrangements, really, as I say, unless we think that the road closures are going to cause a problem. We can't, we have to let this one through on the basis that there's less than a month before it happens, and but obviously take into account the concerns of traders on the French and the Italian markets in future, and maybe look at our policy, and maybe this will be the last one if the full council decides to change its policy. But as far as this one's concerned, it would be unreasonable to stop it now on the basis, as we haven't even debated the principle yet. We've just seen that there have been concerns in the feedback from traders in Church Street. They're reported to the full council. I mean, maybe the full council, will dismiss those concerns. Unlikely, but at the moment, I just drew attention to it because it ties in with this issue of French and Italian street markets. But as far as this one's concerned, I think it would be reasonable to let it through, subject to the highways issues, as I've said. But maybe in the future there'll be a different approach to it, in the light of the concerns of the traders that have been received and reported.
Does that help that we can, still debate these markets further? And because one of the things I'd like to see is just at the end of generators, because they are not very friendly to people who live in these streets and have to live with noisy generators. I know it's only for one day, but we're trying to be like a clean town, and I think we should start looking at these things. So, Councillor Payne, sorry.
I just question, it started at 6 o'clock in the morning. Started at 6 o'clock, the road closure from 6 o'clock in the morning. That would invite people to start turning up.
Setting up.
Yeah, but that's really early if you're living in that road for people setting up.
It's normal, previous, it's been going every year and the same times restricted, restrictions, 6 till 6.
Yeah.
And I mean, the traders they've objected to the fact that it's there and it sort of encloses their shops. But I don't think there's been ever any concerns about the timing before.
Yeah, there's some in that report. People were saying that some of the residents were moaning that it's starting at 7 o'clock.
In the report, is it?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, right. Well.
So I think if we said 7, so they start setting up 7:30, 8 o'clock. I think it'd be more reasonable. Because I agree, we can't really say no because we've always said yes.
Yeah, that is more relevant to what you're being asked to consider here in the highways aspect. So if you think that it's too long a period, then
I just think it's too early.
Yeah.
If we said 7 o'clock, it'd be better.
It's open to you to, obviously to make that response if the rest of the members agree.
Councillor Everton.
Markets and street markets generally start setting up at 6 because it's easier to close the road at that time. If you leave it a couple of hours later, you have more traffic on the road. And you have people that have already parked there.
Thank you. Can we just have one debate, please? Sorry. Councillor Honeyman.
Traditionally, we've had this market every now and then, and I think if there's going to be changes coming, perhaps we could just agree this one, let this one go, because those traders also, they've been impacted as well. They haven't had to be able to have their market for over 1.5 years. So I think that it's no different than what we've allowed before. Maybe we should just go ahead with it and then see what comes up in the later debates.
Yeah, because I mean, we've got the opportunity to seriously look at this at full council next week. So, Councillor Honeyman.
No, I was just trying to, what Councillor Payne was saying regarding obviously with the French one, they come off the ferry, don't they, effectively, and then they almost come straight to Seaforth from here. So in that respect, you could see why it is 6 o'clock, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Because is there midnight ferry their time? It comes in about 4 o'clock our time, something like that. So that's the reason. I know you probably listen to them, don't you? What's the other thing about the wider debate? I haven't read the full agenda for next week. Will that include Christmas magic as well about road closures? Is that included in it? Because that's related to road closures and objections. Some of the traders there think that should be maybe on another location for a trial, like the Crouch, for example. Mm. Is that included as part of it? Mm. Because Christmas Magic is a bit like a street market as well, isn't it? Yeah. I know I'm digressing, but is it included? Is that part of the discussion next week as well?
I think.
Well, Christmas Magic is.
No, I think it's Christmas Magic is.
It's a street market.
It's quite different.
It's different sort of.
The stalls are not going to be in Broad Street this year. I think the proposal is that they're going to be in Crouch Gardens.
Okay, that's good.
So this is slightly different from what.
It's got. I suppose they've got overlapping traits, haven't they? Yeah. Both the Christmas Magic and a typical street market.
But I don't think there's going to be any stalls in Broad Street.
Okay. Right. Thank you for that. Thank you for letting me digress a bit further.
That's the last I heard about it.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So, unless there's any further comments, I don't know if members want to reduce the time as suggested by Councillor Payne, or we leave it as it is for this one. Councillor Corner?
Leave it as is this time. Let's discuss it at full council next week, and then we can from there put other arrangements in place if need be.
Yeah. So that's the proposal. Is it seconded by Councillor Evenden?
Yeah. Thank you. And can I have a show of hands, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8. That's
thank you.
Supported or resolved that we raise no objection.
Yeah. Can you come up to the microphone, please?
Yeah, I noted one abstention.
I didn't vote because I'm the one that put in for the planning, for the road closure.
The thing is, I'm in touch with Muriel Charles in France regularly, and what they've done, we put in for the closure of the roads, and if we don't use it, then we don't use it. It depends on how the French are reacting, or whether they can come over or whether they can't. And they've all had 2 injections, so they're that way inclined, and the spacing and everything, they're all up to speed with that. But we are one of the first markets when they come off the ferry, and then they go to half a dozen other towns after us. So, but I can remark to Muriel Charles that can we start it a bit later instead of say 6 o'clock, 7, 7:30. She will agree to that anyway, because she's like that. And the person that did most of the objection was the hardware shop in Place Lane. Can't think of the name of them now.
Wins.
Yeah, they were the ones that were always objecting. But every time I've given notices out, I write notices out and go and all the people down Church Street. I've never had any objections. You know, they've always looked forward to it for the day.
Okay, thank you for that. And I need to make further comments next week, Councillor Argent. Yeah. Okay, so moving on to agenda item 6, update report. Over to you, Jim.
Yeah, just firstly to report that we've now formally been told by Lewes District Council that they won't be sending out individual notifications of decisions made on Seaford applications. So we won't, I mentioned in previous meetings that the service had suddenly stopped in April, and I was trying to get it restored, but now they've formally said that they're unable to supply this notification system to town and parish councils in the district. So, and they've asked us to rely on the weekly and monthly lists of decisions which they publish on their website, which is the way I've been putting the list together for the last few meetings, transferring the entries on the monthly list to the report. So it looks like that will have to continue. Personally, I found the monthly and weekly lists to be a bit uncertain, because at least when you're notified of an individual decision, you know that's the decision on that application. The weekly and monthly lists are often added to retrospectively. So you think you've got all the decisions from one week. A couple of weeks afterwards, you go back to that week and you find that some have been added to it. So it does mean a bit of extra work in sort of continually back-checking to see if any decisions have been slipped in. But it's obviously an administrative problem at Lewes which they can't get around, or they've decided that they need to withdraw this service. So we'll do the best we can in relying on what's on the website. I've set out the decisions taken in July, which I've taken from the monthly list. Just running through those decisions and commenting on the ones where the decisions differed from our response. As Councillor Edson's pointed out, there's a couple of balcony applications. Firstly, 9 Carlton Road, which is I'm running through the list from the top. 9 Carlton Road, we considered that did not, because of the screens at the side, obscure glass screens at the side, didn't cause an overlooking problem, but Lewes District Council obviously disagreed. The next, there's Hawth Hill, which was refused in line with our objection. That's the sort of the impact on the street scene of the demolition of this garage and the extension. It would be a sort of a different feature in the street scene and out of character. 13 Deal Avenue is one where I've got to make a confession. This should have been considered at the 16th of June meeting, but right up to the 16th of June there was no plans posted on the website. I'd emailed the case officer and the plans were put on the website on the 16th of June, which was the date of the meeting. So clearly we couldn't consider the application on the 16th of June because the plans had just appeared. It was deferred to the 9th of June, but I forgot to put it on the list on the agenda. And in the meantime, it was approved on the 7th of June by Lewes District Council. So it's my fault it didn't go back on the agenda. But what I would say is that there was a previous scheme last year for 13 Deal Avenue which involved an enlargement of the roof or a raising of the roof, which some members thought would be out of character, although it was supported on a split vote. But that was refused by Lewes District Council last year, and this scheme for a single story side extension with roof extension was a sort of lesser alternative scheme to the one which Lewes District Council refused. So as I say, it was approved in the end by Lewes District Council, but unfortunately it wasn't ever considered by this committee. So my apologies for that. The property in Saxon Lane that I could never pronounce, but due to the N's and the G's. But the property in Saxon Lane, you may remember that was in the, it was to do with the flint wall that we objected to it. And what happened on that case was that I was contacted by the case officer quite a few months after it was submitted because we hadn't been notified of it. And he apologised for the late notification. I explained to him that it couldn't go to committee until I think it was the 9th of July because we hadn't received the notification in time. He said that would be okay. It was reported on the 9th of July and there was an objection, but we now find that it was actually approved on the 7th of July. So although the case officer knew that the notification was in late and that he would have to wait to the 9th of July for our response, it was still decided on the 7th of July. So I'd like your support for us to put in a polite complaint to Lewes District Council about that application, about the fact that our objection was not considered because it wasn't received in time, in spite of the fact that, as I say, that it was known that there would be a delay in our response. So is that okay with members? So that's very unfortunate, but as I say, everyone makes mistakes. Then there's a second balcony application there, again retrospective balcony application, which was refused on grounds of overlooking 83 Stafford Road, where we raised no objection, subject to the installation of an obscure glazed screen. So it shows the sensitivity of Lewes District Council to these retrospective balcony applications. And personally, I can understand why people may think that there's no specific consent needed for balconies, because some of them are quite minor features on the rear of properties, and you know, it's I can understand people thinking, well, you know, I need consent for an extension, but maybe not necessarily a small balcony. But you know, obviously there is a need for consent to be applied for on these things. Often, because of mistakes on the part of the owner, consent has to be applied for retrospectively. But that's no reason why there should be any penalty for the owner. You're allowed to put in a retrospective application. And personally, I think, and obviously the committee must think that Lewis are being a bit harsh on balcony applications because, as I say, there are two there where we've supported them, but Lewis have turned them down. But that's all the comments I've got on that schedule, thanks, unless there's any questions from members.
Just note the reports. Voting. Okay, so that concludes the meeting at 8:50. Well done, everybody.